This should be fun.
I agree.
If it's not fun, we're driving around a 350 horsepower Supra, we're doing something wrong. Yeah. That's good times. Hey, so we run a fleet of vehicles for a year. We call it a long-term test. You've probably heard the phrase before, but where Cart and Drivers is different is because we aim for 40,000 miles in 1 year. That's 3 times as much as the national average. Why do we do that? Well, we figure that this extended amount of miles tells you what it's like to live with a car on a daily basis, which is very important. But it also should reveal any significant issues an owner would experience in the first year or so of ownership. Now, like all tests, it's not perfect, but it is the most comprehensive because we do things like cross-country road trips and we drive in real winter, which we're in right now in Michigan, obviously. We did all that with this 2020 Toyota GR Supra, and we're gonna explain to you the good, the bad, and what you should know about this vehicle if you were to buy one. Our Toyota GR Supra came equipped as a 3-liter premium painted in downshift blue. A great color for this car in person. Its only options were the driving assistance package, which added things like adaptive cruise, as well as carpeted floor mats and wheel locks. Total price, $56,285. So a common complaint you'll hear about the Supra is that mechanically, underneath all the bodywork, everything comes from BMW. If you look hard enough, you will actually see BMW logos on some parts of this car. And because of that, this Supra inherits a couple BMW traits, both good and bad. We'll talk about the bad later. But on the good side, this is a terrific sports car. This thing rips. It handles really well, and this engine is fantastic. It's rated at 335 horsepower in 2020. In 2021, it got a power boost. We actually dynoed both model years to see the difference and found that both make more horsepower at the wheels than advertised. That's always a good thing. Now, that's great on paper, but in the real world, the sense of acceleration is just terrific. This thing sounds great and it feels great. When you step on the gas at low speeds in summer conditions, of course, you'll light up the rear tires. The exhaust sound is just fantastic. The acceleration is good too. When we tested it at 0 to 60 in I think 3.7 seconds and a quarter mile in 12.2 seconds, that's fast. It's fast enough for the real world and really exciting to drive. Now that's the engine, but when you talk about handling, this thing has a lot of traction, but also really good communication from the steering and really good feel from the brakes. It's something that you could enjoy on a racetrack when you're sliding it around or going for lap times, but it's also something that's really fun to drive on a back road, even like this road right now in the snow. I mean, this is a car that in the summer we averaged 1.05 G on our skid pad. That is a lot of stick. This is a good car to drive. And when you put it in this sport mode, you get those burbles on the exhaust. Yeah, this is a good time. This is a good time. What we've concluded though is that the Supra is not a great road trip car. And of course you can't criticize a small sports car for being a small sports car, but you should know what you're signing up for. And that is a car with not a lot of cargo space. We took our Supra all over the eastern United States and found that, yeah, it was comfortable enough to drive the distance, but there was basically enough room for one person. If you brought 2 people, you really needed to pack lightly. Internally, we disagreed on the seats. One of the taller drivers on our staff thought these leather-covered bucket seats were just fine, while somebody of average height complained about the comfort. Pretty much everybody noted that this low roof and small windows made exterior visibility more difficult. Sometimes you'd actually have to scrunch your head down just to see a stoplight. And even our youngest and most limber drivers complained that getting in and out could be awkward. The worst thing about driving the Supra is the wind buffeting. That's that really annoying throbbing noise that happens when you drive with like one window down at freeway speeds. In the Supra, it is the worst, among the worst, that anybody at Car and Driver has ever experienced. It's so bad that by 55 miles an hour, you're like desperately reaching to roll the windows up. And that's bad in itself, but what makes it worse is that this engine sounds so good that you want to have the windows down so you can hear the exhaust more. But then by the time that you do any amount of reasonable acceleration, you have to crank the windows up. So it like defeats the purpose of the fantastic sounding exhaust. It's really annoying. And then winter hit. Call us crazy, but at Car and Driver, we test sports cars in the winter. And we've done it recently with a long-term Chevrolet Corvette, a Mazda Miata, a Porsche 718 Cayman, and a Ford Mustang. And none of these sports cars, with their ranges of price and performance, challenged us in the snow like the Supra did. And the reason why is down here, it's the ground clearance or lack thereof. And it was an issue for us because when the snow got heavy on the roads, this car would routinely get stuck. And a lot of our staffers had to dig out the car to free it. They start driving and they'd immediately get stuck again. If you live in the snow belt, the Supra is a 3-season car. Just keep that in mind. Let's talk about tires. We're on factory Michelin's right now in the snow because we like to live dangerously, but we want to call out the winter tires we put on the Supra. They were a set of expensive and rare Pirelli Soto Zero Series 2 tires that are designed for sports car use in winter. And fun fact, the rears were developed for the Aston Martin DB9 and the fronts were for the Lamborghini Aventador. But I digress. I call them out because they were nice to have in winter and they worked really well. On the days where it was freezing but not snowing, the tires would have enough traction to accept the power and handling and braking performance you'd want to experience in a Supra. It would remind you what it was like to drive the car in spring and summer. And importantly, they didn't feel like they neutered the car too much relative to these Michelins. So good on you, Pirelli. So this Supra, this Toyota, may have the internals of a BMW, but it was as reliable in our hands as a Toyota Camry. It went in for service for the normal scheduled maintenance, oil filter, cabin air filter inspection, the usual stuff. Now, where it got complicated though, and this ties back into the BMW mechanics underneath the hood, was actually getting the service appointments done. We ran into situations frequently with Michigan-based Toyota dealerships where we'd call them to schedule an oil change or what have you, and they didn't do it because they didn't stock the BMW specific fluid that the car called for during service. So this led to situations where they either couldn't take the car immediately or at all, or they would delay the service for an extended period of time while they acquired that fluid. It got more bizarre during the alignment situation where we got this car aligned. We wanted to get this car aligned, called the Toyota dealership, and they just didn't stock the BMW specific hardware or fasteners that this car requires to get an alignment. We then tried calling a BMW dealer and they couldn't align the Supra or get the Supra aligned because they didn't stock the Toyota specs that the Supra calls for during an alignment. Keep that in mind for if you own this car, that getting it serviced, the quality of that experience will rest heavily on how crafty your Toyota's service department can be. What else should you know? Well, we had some other out-of-pocket costs resulting from us wearing out the factory Michelin Pilot Supersport tires, which we did a handful of times through use and road debris. We also patched a windshield chip that relieved us of $50. The Supra inherits another BMW trait that we're not especially fond of, and that's the fact that it doesn't come with a spare tire. This led to a series of unfortunate events for one Joey Caparella, who during a road trip down to Nashville got a flat in Kentucky and spent hours on the phone with Toyota roadside assistance in order to get it flatbedded to the nearest dealer. Luckily, he had a friend drive a couple hours to pick him up and get him on the way. And then when it was at the service department, it took nearly a week to get a replacement Pirelli Sottozero Series 2 tire installed before the car could get back on the road again. Like we mentioned, these tires are rare. So keep this in mind if you plan on driving in winter on a set of exotic and rare Pirelli tires. And also remember that not having a spare tire on the car can be quite the bummer when you really need it. Let's talk about fuel economy. The EPA rates the 2020 Toyota GR Supra at 26 mpg combined, and after 40,000 miles of driving, that's exactly what we got. So, good on you, Toyota. What's even better, though, is we would routinely see over 30 mpg during long freeway drives. And what makes that even better is the fuel tank in this car is nearly 14 gallons, so when you do the math, we would typically see over 400 miles on a tank during a long cross-country drive. That's great. Fuel economy is, of course, not the focus for sports cars, but when it's this good, it's a really nice perk to have. What did we learn after 40,000 miles? The Supra has some downsides. The service can be more complicated than it should be due to the BMW mechanicals, and the wind buffeting is just awful. Also, it's best as a 3-season car. This is a true sports car. It's thrilling and satisfying to drive, and it attracts crowds wherever it goes. We believe that these aspects easily outweigh any of the negatives. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you like this video, let us know in the comments below. If you didn't, hey, tell us why in the comments below too. Like and subscribe, and click the links for more information.